Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia. If you are new here, I do apologize for missing you on Friday. I had the flu last week, which was not fun. Half the week I missed work, the other half I worked from home, and it was a rough week, but we are on the mend. I'm starting to feel better. I definitely sound better. So I figured I would just yap a bit about the books that I read in January as well as my February TBR. And I will just kind of be honest with you that I don't really like to do TBRs because I'm really, really bad at sticking to them. I could list out 4 to 5 books that I want to read in March, and come March, I will be lucky if I've actually read one of them. So I think I have about 4, maybe 5 February TBR hopefuls. I'm going to call them hopefuls. So your expectations are as low as mine. And let's just chat. Let's catch up. How has your January reading been so far this year? Mine's been a little slow, but I'm okay with that because it's definitely better than last January. But how's your reading going? Let me know in the comments, and let's just dive right in. Starting off 2025 strong, the first book I read was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. And if you're not familiar, here is a little summary. In a world where magic has been banished and a tyrant king determined to keep it away, an assassin is summoned. She does not come to kill the king, but to win her freedom in a competition against 23 other deadly assassins, criminals, and thieves. If she can beat them and serve the crown, she will eventually be granted her freedom. But with a charming prince, a thorn in her side captain of the guard, and an evil looming within the castle walls, our main character Selena has a lot of obstacles in her way. But there is a lot more to Selena than meets the eye. I do also just want to say that I'm reading this series technically out of order, I guess you could say. So I'm starting with Throne of Glass, and I'm planning to read Assassin's Blade third. And this is more of a comment for the if you know people. This book was interesting. I am glad I read it first. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that after I read Assassin's Blade, but I feel like this book did a pretty good job setting up the world, setting up the characters. I feel like we're going to be with Selena, Cole, and Dorian for a while. So it was nice to start to get to know them in this book. Selena has a lot of layers to her, which I really like. We only really see a few of them in this book, but she's also very young. I believe she's 18. So I'm very, very excited to see where else her character is going to go. And obviously there are a lot more books in this series. And so if you read this series, you're probably sitting here looking at me thinking, damn, that girl does not know what she is in for. And let me tell you, I am excited. Because of spoilers that I have seen online, I know that Dorian and Selena do not end up together, but I really enjoyed their banter in this book. I also really liked Princess Nehemia's character. I loved her friendship with Selena once they got a little bit more comfortable with each other. They were definitely a little bit of a rocky start there. I also like Cole too. Another preface, am pronouncing his name as Cole. I think it's pronounced like Kale or something like that. I'm just saying Cole for my sanity, so please don't come for me. But as annoying as Cole can be sometimes, I do feel like it makes sense for his character. He's obviously worked hard to be where he is as captain of the guard, and I don't blame him for not wanting to ruin his position or reputation or anything else based off a cute 18-year-old girl. The ending was a bit over the top, but I just feel like that's Sarah J. Maas for you, and I honestly wouldn't have had it any other way. So Throne of Glass gets a solid 4 stars out of 5 stars from me. And the next book up on the list is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. And in Listen for the Lie, we are set in a tiny Texas town. Lucy and Savannah, or Savvy, as we will refer to her going forward, are two best friends living picture-perfect lives. Lucy is married to a handsome, wealthy man, and Savvy is the social butterfly of their small town. That is until Savvy is murdered, and Lucy is found covered in her blood. Even though Lucy was declared not guilty, she has since fled to Los Angeles to start her life over. But her past won't seem to leave her alone. Podcaster Ben brings interest back to Savvy's cold case, interviewing the townspeople and getting their interesting perspectives on both Lucy and Savvy. Lucy soon finds herself drawn into Ben's world, and the two begin working together to uncover the truth, no matter what ugly other truths it might bring. So before I even say anything about the story itself or this book as a whole, I listened to this book as an audiobook at work, and let me tell you, This audiobook is so good. The production of it is just so well done. Between the characters, I loved the music for the podcast that split up the narration of the book versus the narration of the podcast. Like, it literally felt like I was listening to a podcast episode, even though they were very, very short. It was honestly such a good production, and even though I didn't really love the story itself, for reasons I'll get to shortly, I really loved the audiobook, and I would recommend it to anyone looking for an audiobook that is like an adult thriller. Like, just listen to it. It is so good. This book is about 9 hours, but I finished it in 2 days, listening only at my desk at work. It flew by. It was crazy. But I think that's just because I was enjoying the production value so much, and I'm just not ever going to be able to shut up about the production value of this book, and it's going to get a little embarrassing for me. So let's move on to the actual story and characters. So the story itself is interesting. We have our main character Lucy, who was found covered in her best friend Savvy's blood after she was discovered murdered, and there's definitely a big amnesia trope at play here, but I think what disappointed me the most was, instead of Lucy trying to find out the truth of what happened to Savvy, she just kind of gives up. She gives up, she moves to Los Angeles, she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna start over. Fortunately for Lucy, but Ben is a podcaster who decides to go to the tiny Texas town because he's taken an interest in Savvy's case. And Ben is my favorite character in this whole book. All the other characters, which is pretty much all the other townspeople in this town, because at the beginning of the book, Lucy pretty much breaks up with her boyfriend and gets fired. So, like, those characters don't really affect the story. Ben is just by far my favorite character because he's the most decent character in this whole story. Everyone else is literally so raunchy and gross, and it was such a turnoff. And I don't understand. Like, I tried to put myself in Lucy's shoes, and I'm like, listen, if my best friend was murdered and I was there and I lost my memory because I was also attacked and I walked away with a lump on my head covered in my best friend's blood, there's no way that I would just leave town and be like, you know what, I just need to start over. Everyone thinks I did it, so I did it. It is what it is. Girl, what? But like I said, all the other characters in this book, like, suck. Like, just the normalization of, like, abuse and infidelity and just, like, really gross behavior really turned me off. Like, I really wanted more decent characters besides Ben. I will shout out Beverly, Lucy's grandmother. I love her because, one, my grandmother's name is also Beverly, and so, like, I stan, okay? But her sarcasm just brought a much needed, like, reprieve to Lucy's, like, self-deprecating, dark sense of humor. All in all, though, this wasn't a bad story. I do kind of wish the author hadn't made all of the characters, like, suck, with the exception of Ben and Beverly. I did want a little bit more from Lucy just because Savvy was her best friend. And when everything is said and done and the dust settles and the big reveal comes, I was a little disappointed. I felt like it felt tiny bit flat, just because everyone turned out to be just so, ooh. Initially, I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's closer to a 3 stars out of 5 stars. Sorry if you like this book. I didn't fully jive with it, but it's also not like I hated it or I loved it. I feel like it's solidly 50-50 in the middle. But the audiobook production, like, please, dear God, listen to this book. The audiobook is so good. The next book on the list is also an audiobook, and that is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. If you're not familiar with Don't Let the Forest In, our main character, Andrew Perrault, is entering his senior year of high school at his expensive private school, Wickwood Academy. Andrew struggles at the academy, relying on his relationship with his best friend Thomas Rye and his sister Dove to get by. Also, a quick note that I missed in the summary, Dove and Andrew are twins, which is a little bit relevant later on. Andrew writes to Thomas to keep himself grounded, and as his sister Dove pulls further and further away from him, Andrew finds himself leaning more and more on Thomas. But something strange is going on with Thomas. He returns to Wickwood Academy with blood-stained sleeves, and his abusive parents having mysteriously vanished. Thomas won't speak about it to Andrew, and seems to have lost interest in drawing his horror-esque sketches of monsters. So in order to find out the truth about what is happening with Thomas, Andrew follows him into the off-limits forest one night, and discovers him fighting a nightmarish monster. A drawing of Thomas's that has come to life. Thomas's drawings have come to life and are leaving no survivors behind. To protect Wickwood, Andrew and Thomas spend night after night battling the monsters, but as their obsession and feelings grow stronger, so do the monsters, and Andrew begins to fear that the only way to destroy the monsters is to destroy their creator. So first things first, okay? I am a sucker for a pretty cover, okay? I fully support buying books based on looks. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to put it out there. And this cover, because I'm going to put it here on the screen, is gorgeous. Okay? Look at it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Of course I had to read this book. But I will also say, don't let the cover fool you, because this story is dark. It gave me anxiety. There's a lot of undertones of grief. And there's also a lot of things going on that aren't kind of straightforward within the story itself. And like I said, this was another book that I listened to as an audiobook. I think Michael Crouch did a fantastic job voicing Andrew, our main character. I don't really have any complaints about it, to be honest. This was another one that I finished pretty quickly. I think I finished this book in 2 days, listening to it just at my desk at work while I did my stuff. I did like the dynamic between Thomas and Andrew. I loved that they were both creative, but in different ways. Andrew is a writer, he loves words, and Thomas is an artist. He always is described as having ink or charcoal on his fingers. He's a little bit more stereotypical as an artist. And I also really liked how both of their personalities just kind of worked together. There was a dark undertone where you kind of got the sense that there was something else going on. The way this story is written, I think it would read better as an actual book, as a physical book, or an ebook, only because the author is very, very heavy with the prose. And so sometimes we would go from like, we're at the academy with Andrew to in the woods with Thomas, and sometimes it was a little bit jarring to snap back and forth between the two realities that Andrew was living in. But also the prose was sometimes so heavy and metaphorical and lyrical that I would get confused, that I was sitting at my desk and I would have to rewind the audiobook a little bit because I was like, wait, like what just happened? So I do think, just because of the writing style of the author, that this book would probably be better to be read versus listened to, but the story itself is good. And it is very much YA. I read a lot of fantasy romance that is marketed as YA, but it ain't YA. The like steamiest this book gets is like a little bit of kissing. And that's something I really appreciated, because I'm so tired of publishers marketing books as YA when they're clearly not YA. And this book is very much young adult. There were some interesting themes though. I don't know what to categorize this book as for myself, because there were definitely like horror-ish, thriller-ish elements, but there were also some kind of like fantasy sci-fi elements. It was very young adult. It was very like coming of age, coming into oneself, worrying about like self-identity and trying to figure out who you are. And it touched on a lot of kind of like dark themes, which I found as an adult who is fairly confident in who I am as a person, enjoyed. But I definitely think as a younger reader, this book would have hit me a little bit harder. If I had one like big complaint about this book, it would be the ending. I'm just not someone who likes ambiguous endings. It's your story. Tell me how it ends. I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess. I don't want to think one thing when you mean another. Like, as the author, as the writer, as the creator of this story, tell me what happens. Let me as the reader decide if I hate it or I love it. Because the thing is, I would rather create a different ending in my head from the one that you gave me than finish the book and just feel so unsettled. And I'm pretty sure this book is a standalone. I don't believe there's going to be a second book published after it. And I think that's also why it bothered me so much more too. Because if it was ambiguous, but it was the first in like a 2 or 3 book series, I'd be like, okay, I'll just wait for the next book. But I don't think another book is coming. So if I had to complain about anything, I would complain about that. And that just the writing style was a little bit too grand for an audiobook. But I would say 3.75 stars out of 5 stars for Don't Let the Forest In, because I do think that it was written pretty well. I did like the style of writing. I just don't think it worked as an audiobook personally. Do kind of want to borrow the book from my library just to see if I feel any differently. And if I do, I will update you. But yeah, 3.75 out of 5. Okay, so in terms of currently reading February TBR, I actually just finished Onyx Storm, and Rebecca, meet me in the parking lot so we can fight. Thanks. But I'm also currently reading Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, and I'm about 10% into this book. I feel like the story is about to kick off. So I'm still very, very much at the beginning of this book. But I am hoping to start A Crown So Silver by Lyra Celine. This is the first book on my February TBR. This is the sequel to A Feather So Black. I have semi-high hopes for this book. Mainly though, I'm just hoping that it doesn't take more than 30% to get interesting, because that was a big issue in A Feather So Black. It took so long to get interesting, so I'm really hoping that in this book, she just gets to the point and gets the story going. The second two books I actually borrowed from Kindle Unlimited, and they are Metal Slinger by Rachel Snyder and Anathema by Carrie Lake. These two I'm hoping to read next. I've read really good things about them online, just in like book groups and things like that. Also, my Kindle stickers for for anyone curious. But I've heard really good things about them online. I find that I'm actually a big fan of like dark fantasy romance, so I'm hoping that the two of them hit the mark. I've also heard that Metal Slinger has a really intense cliffhanger, and I feel like at this point I'm a pro. I feel like I'm on my third kid with cliffhangers. Like, it's cool. We're gonna be okay. And the last book on my February TBR is Rebel Witch by Kirsten Ciccarelli. Rebel Witch is the second book in the Crimson Moth series, which is the sequel to Heartless Hunter, which I very, very much enjoyed. And Heartless Hunter I listened to as an audiobook, so I'm kind of hoping that Rebel Witch has the same narrator as Heartless Hunter, so I can listen to that one as an ebook and not kind of pinhole myself into all physical ebook versions of books in February. But all in all, January was a little bit slow, but I am really happy that I started to get back into audiobooks, because that was something that kind of fell off for me in 2024. I really stopped listening to as many audiobooks, and I kind of regret that, because my job really isn't phone heavy, and there are good chunks throughout the day where like no one's really talking to me or calling me, and it's just emails. So I feel like that time is kind of wasted if I'm not listening to like an audiobook or a podcast or something. So I really want to get back into audiobooks in 2025, and I'm starting off pretty strong, but I am also very, very picky about narrators. It's really annoying, and I need a really good narrator. Otherwise, like I can't do it. Like, I've tried to force myself, and I always end up just like not even finishing the book because I just can't do it. I'm so picky. I admit it. I am just exposing myself in this video. But it is what it is. I'm just being honest. So that's kind of all I've got. I feel like my throat is getting a little scratchy, so I'm gonna go make myself a cup of tea. I hope you are staying warm if you live where it is cold, because we just got more snow, with more snow on the way. Not looking forward to that, especially because I still have to go to work in it. So with that being said, I hope that your 2025 is starting off strong and you're reading books that you enjoy. If you read Onyx Storm, please tell me your thoughts in the comments, because I could really use some solidarity. Unless you liked it, then I'm sorry. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree. But that's all I've got. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.